Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, he, she's, theys, and them, welcome back to Me's My Passion, YouTube's premier channel about all things women's football. And after days, months, years of anticipation, the Women's World Cup has finally kicked off today. And I've just come from watching the second match of Matchday 1, which was Australia versus Ireland. And I thought that in this video, I would give you a quick rundown of some of the things that I saw and learned by watching these two games that we saw today that were on TV. Now, I'm going to start it off with the inaugural match of this World Cup, which was New Zealand versus Norway. But just before that, a special mention goes out to the attendance for today's games, as they both shattered the attendance records for both Australia and New Zealand, with the New Zealand game getting in a total of 42,137 people and the Australia game getting a total of 75,784 people, which smashed the attendance records for both the home teams here. So massive props to those teams. It shows just how far the women's game has progressed, and it just wanted to mention that before we get stuck into the video. Now, the headlines coming out of this match will obviously be New Zealand finally getting their first ever win at a World Cup ever, and finally hopefully exercising the demon of that Tottenham DNA that we talked about in the previous video. Now, jokes aside though, this is a very momentous occasion for New Zealand. You could see at the end of the game how much it meant to the players, the staff, and the crowd that was there cheering on the football ferns. And I would just like to say congratulations to New Zealand and hard luck to Norway. But when you watch this game, from the word go, this was going to be New Zealand's game. Now, both teams here, they lined up in a 4-1-2-3 formation, which definitely suggested that they were both going for a very balanced approach. And it was just a matter of seeing who would take the initiative to start off the fight. And it was obviously New Zealand that did that, as in the very first 10 minutes of the game, New Zealand were completely overwhelming Norway left, right, and center. The press was very heavy. Anytime New Zealand lost the ball, they would do everything in their power to regain possession and recover from any small little mistake that they made. Norway absolutely stood no chance in this game, unfortunately. In the first half, both teams had equal opportunities to go ahead, and I'd just like to particularly give a special shout out to Steinmetz, who in the 23rd minute had a very encouraging individual run, but which was unfortunately quickly stopped by the Norway defense here. And for Norway themselves, they did their best to just try and soil the event for New Zealand by just trying to stifle them out of getting any scoring opportunities out of the first half of the game. But Norway did look very lethargic, very afraid, which was a little bit of an odd thing to see, considering that Norway going into this game were the massive favorites. Like, I'm pretty sure 95% of everyone watching was expecting Norway to immediately be on the attack and on the offensive and ready to just completely put away New Zealand in the first half. But none of that ever happened. Norway at no point throughout the first half looked like getting into the game, which is a far cry from what New Zealand were doing, as I said to you earlier. There was a plethora of action that took place throughout this game. Particularly moments that I would like to highlight here is the crazy, absolutely insane defensive stop by Stott in the 36th minute of the game, where Norway looked like they were about to go on the offensive and score, but Stott out of nowhere completely stopped the shot and gave Norway absolutely no chance of going forward in the game. And obviously towards the end of the first half, we had a very imperious and dominant run by Wilkinson to try and break the deadlock, but unfortunately she was unable to get the goal, which would eventually come for her in the second half. Early in the second half, in the 47th minute, Wilkinson did score from a very good team goal there. Norway were absolutely shocked to the core, and they had no opportunity of stopping her whatsoever. And it was Norway themselves who were slowly coming back to life in the second half and being the team that everybody expected them to be, but it was unfortunately a little bit too late for them to make any kind of impact, as even though there's some very good opportunities by the likes of Manum and Hegerberg, who unbelievably missed a couple of sitter goals, albeit they were being swarmed by the New Zealand defenders. Norway had no chance of coming back into the game, and this was exclamated by the penalty that they conceded late on in the game in the 87th minute, which was unfortunately missed by Percival of the New Zealand team. Overall, it was a very spirited performance full of energy and flamboyance and passion from the New Zealand team. And out of everyone, they've just come to show that they're not here to make up the numbers, but they're actually here to compete and to fight and do their best to get out of the group stage, which I think they have done a very good job of starting off so far. Right now, they're top of the group with 3 points after this win, of course. And for Norway, it is unfortunately a wake-up call for them to actually get serious in the next 2 games. Otherwise, they do risk suffering a very early exit from the World Cup. But other than that, it is a very good start to the World Cup for New Zealand. And I'd just like to give a special mention to the youngster India Paige Riley, who was an absolute dynamo out on the wing. She is definitely going to be another one to watch there for the football ferns as they go forward in the group stages, and hopefully she can get herself a goal on the back of her very good performance today. But that's just one player in particular. The entire New Zealand team deserves so much credit for such a good performance today. And for Norway, hopefully they can pull up their socks and try and navigate their way from this very slow and lethargic start. And now on to the next game here, which was Australia versus Ireland, which started off with a very big shock here, as it was announced that Sam Kerr would be missing this game and the next one for Australia due to an injury occurred in training. Now focusing on the game, Australia lined up in a 4-4-2 and Ireland in a 3-4-3. These formations were definitely looking at maximizing the strengths of the respective teams, and hopefully they would do their best to just go at it with the opposition. And this was by far the most physical match to date of the World Cup. Now obviously that's just comparing it to one other game, but it definitely set the standard for the physicality to expect at this Women's World Cup. This game was very heavy on transitions, as neither Australia nor Ireland had enough time on the ball to actually make a difference. It was just a matter of trying to get the ball into the opposition's box as fast as possible and try to take a shot off, but it was not successful for any of the teams, particularly in the first half. It was just ball concession every few minutes. And it was that heavy transition that led to the physicality that was experienced throughout the game, as both Australia and Ireland, they were just going at it, particularly with Katie McCabe. She was at the forefront of a majority of the tackles that were going down, really leading from the front foot there, and it was a very intense game to watch. Very entertaining from my perspective. Overall, in the first half, it was Australia who had the lion's share of opportunities to score from goal. Something very interesting that I noted at the very beginning of the game, which Australia kicked off, 5 of their players were waiting by the halfway line, so I think Gustafsson, he had an approach where he wanted his team to quickly break and go for an attacking opportunity and catch Ireland off guard, but unfortunately we didn't see any of that transpiring, as the ball soon went out of possession from Australia to Ireland. So hopefully they can try that tactic again in the next game and we can actually see it be executed perfectly, so you get a proper idea of what Gustafsson was trying to do in that first instance. But other than that, in the 5th minute of added time in the first half, it was Caitlin Ford who missed a very golden opportunity. Again, there was some defensive presence, but I personally think that she had the opportunity to just bury the goal one time, but she just couldn't for whatever reason. And unfortunately, the first half ended up 0-0. But just like the New Zealand and Norway game, it would not stay 0-0 for too long in the second half, as in the 50th minute of the second half of the game, Australia was then awarded a penalty due to Shiva, who conceded through being a little bit rough in the box, and it was promptly taken away by Steph Catley, who converted to make it 1-0 to Australia. And it would turn out to be this penalty that turned the tide of this game, as Ireland suddenly switched up to 5th gear and started to just come forward more and more for Australia. Australia at times were completely overwhelmed by the Irish attack, and it was just very scintillating and entertaining to watch Ireland completely go for it and give their all against Australia, especially with the additions of Larkin and Quinn towards the second half of the game, which were very inspired substitutions by Vera Paul, the Ireland manager. And it was very unfortunate that at the end of the game, Ireland could not come away with a goal to just draw the match level, but it was a very energetic, very scintillating, very spirited performance by the Irish girls in green, and it will definitely be another indication that just like New Zealand, Ireland are not here to make up the numbers. They actually want to fight to get out of the group stages, and they're not just going to be rolled over by any team that thinks that Ireland are a walkover. So it was very refreshing and very exciting and very fun to watch these teams go head to head and just fight for the win in the end. Full credit goes to both New Zealand and Australia, the co-hosts, for coming away with the win and starting off their World Cup campaigns in a very, very good way, especially for New Zealand, who have won their first ever match at a Women's World Cup, and for Australia for showing that even without Sam Kerr, they're still a threat, but just not as lethal as they would be with Kerr, as Ireland showed. And extra special mention goes to Ireland, who at their first major tournament here in the Women's World Cup, and they just went hell for leather and they just went all out. They did not sit back and allow Australia to come and dominate and dictate the game, but Ireland actually brought the fight to them. And hopefully in the next game, Ireland can actually come away with a win, because that is what they deserve and they should not come out with anything less. So in the event that they do get knocked out of the group stages, they still have something to show for their progress. They have every right to keep their heads held up high, and hopefully they can go on and build from this very, very good performance. And those are the things that we here at Misma Passion have learned from these first two games of Australia versus Ireland and Norway versus New Zealand. We would personally like to know, what did you learn from any of these games? If you watched any of them at all, please leave your thoughts in the comments. But other than that, this will be something we'll be doing as every game goes by, just coming here quickly making a video and just highlighting and detailing things that we learned from watching these games in particular, and what stood out the most for us, and so on and so forth. But other than that, please do enjoy the rest of your day. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.